Hello and welcome back to another Ultimate Spider-Man review. These weeks are going so fast. Like, as soon as you start uploading every week, you upload a video and then before you know it, you're back like uploading again. It's so weird, but I'm glad you guys enjoyed the previous issue. I did as well, and there was a lot of stuff going on. But today, the War of the Symbiote Saga continues in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 128. And as you can tell by the front cover, Venom isn't looking like his usual self. And no, that is not because of an artist's choice. That's because of something that happens in the issue. And for that, you'll have to see later in this review. But as always, before we get into the reviews, let's recap on the events of the previous issue and get everyone caught up to speed, just so we're all on the same page. No pun intended. So in the last review, we saw the issue open up with Gwen Stacy being interrogated by Tony Stark and Dr. Kurt Connors at the Triskelion base. And it was super interesting to have a reintroduction to Gwen's character. Anyway, after escaping due to a breakout of the Sinister Six, Gwen ends up walking free and disappearing for the remainder of the issue. But then we jump to a few pages later where we're met in the present day with Eddie Brock approaching Peter at school, threatening to reveal his identity should he not help get the Venom suit back. After swinging around the Baxter building, researching at the Daily Bugle and heading home, Peter climbs into his bedroom to find a Carnage-faced Gwen Stacy asking for help, and that is where the issue left us. What a cliffhanger. So yeah, we've got a lot of crazy stuff going on in the previous issue, but if you've noticed and you keep track of it, it's all coming back to Peter Parker and his inner circle. So Gwen Stacy, Eddie Brock, Mary Jane's not really involved in it too much, but you got Nick Fury, the Ultimates, potentially Aunt May, and Carnage as well. And Carnage is a pretty significant character considering how much carnage it caused when we were first introduced to the symbiote in issue 61 of the series. Guys, remember, if you're loving this series and you want to stay updated, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to stay updated for when these videos go up every Monday. And now, without any further ado, it's time to get into the final part of the War of the Symbiote Saga in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 128. Let's get into it. Hilariously, the comic opens up back on the park bench with Eddie Brock, and as we've come to know, a potential victim sitting next to him. I love the symbolism of what this park bench and scenario represents, as it's been a common situation throughout the entire War of the Symbiote Saga, and especially fitting now as it only makes sense how we started the saga on this park bench, and now we're ending the saga here too. Definitely an interesting concept. Anyway, the comic continues the Peter and Gwen situation we were left hanging on, and I believe we see a good piece of character development from Peter here, as it seems through all his experiences he started to actually acknowledge that these crazy situations are normal for his life because of how well he handles Gwen potentially being Carnage. He doesn't freak out, he just embraces the possibility and asks questions. Gwen also confirms she's been held in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody all this time since the Clone Saga. However, one of my favourite moments of the issue was Eddie Brock turning up at the front door and being confronted by Aunt May. Remember, Aunt May knows Peter is Spider-Man, and so she's pretty clued up on Peter and his enemies coming after him. I thought it was super cool to see Aunt May threaten Eddie with a gun. It absolutely stays true to her character in the Ultimate Universe, and also suggests how past experiences with Uncle Ben dying has impacted hers and Peter's life significantly. You also have to remember in this moment, Eddie doesn't have any powers. He's literally a normal human, and when Peter sees what's going on, he knocks Eddie out in one swooping punch, and it's honestly quite hilarious. It also makes me question Eddie's thought process going into this as well, because Peter could flatten Eddie in 2 seconds. So really, Eddie shouldn't have any grounds to threaten Peter on, or anyone close to him. Definitely a great moment anyway. The comic does an incredible job of showing how the most personal stories of Spider-Man are the best and most interesting ones. In this issue, literally every single moment involves someone close to Peter, whether it's Gwen Stacy, Eddie Brock, Aunt May, or Peter himself, and suggests how Peter creates his own problems just by being Spider-Man. It's a similar situation with Batman. Essentially, the Joker wouldn't exist without Batman, because Batman is what causes normal street thugs to level up and become worthy of standing up against a hero such as Batman. And it's the same with Spider-Man. Also, quick side note, how did Gwen Stacy get there on the rooftop with Eddie and Peter? Like, I know she's kind of Carnage, but when I was reading the issue, she literally just appears on the rooftop with Peter and Eddie. It's pretty weird. Anyway, I touched on it a few issues ago, but Eddie brings to light where him and Peter are stark opposites of each other. Peter literally got everything. He got spider powers, he became a superhero, he got popularity, etc. Whereas Eddie's life has been literally ruined by the Venom symbiote. Of course, it's by his own wrong choices technically, but you can see how Eddie not only doesn't believe in himself, but hasn't had an easy ride in life just in general anyway. Now we have the craziest moment where Spider-Man kind of asks for this to happen, and out of nowhere Gwen turns into the full-on Carnage symbiote, and it turns out all of this time Eddie had the Venom symbiote already within him and it just needed something to pull it out. I hope Eddie's character develops from this, as it's one of those moments where you shouldn't lack self-belief, because really if Eddie believed in himself, then he most likely would have found the Venom symbiote already within himself anyway, without the need for the Carnage symbiote. The comic panels that follow are crazy, and I just love how evil and fierce Carnage looks. Also notice how big Carnage is compared to when we were first introduced to the character back in issue 61. The art style of the comic also really complements the chaos of the symbiotes and gives off the unsettling feeling of there being no control. Something extremely interesting happens here though that lays the foundation for the future issues, and it's that when Venom absorbs the Carnage symbiote, it leaves Gwen Stacy behind. Venom's appearance also changes, as now Venom has become complete and can control the symbiote properly instead of the symbiote controlling Eddie. Really interesting stuff, but once again Eddie escapes after this, so it's pretty crazy. And you'll see he willingly stops fighting Spider-Man because now he has control and he also has what he wants. Anyway, the comic jumps to later in the timeline back at the Triskelion base where Gwen Stacy is re-interrogated by Tony Stark, and we discover Gwen has been separated from the Carnage symbiote and she is quite literally an exact molecular copy of the original Gwen Stacy that died. I need to make this clear, she's not a clone. So basically Gwen Stacy has been returned to us, and I know it's very cliche for characters in comics to never truly stay dead, but in the Ultimate Universe they usually tend to stick to deaths being fully dead, or at least they did when these issues were releasing compared to the more recent Ultimate Spider-Man issues with Miles Morales and everything. Pretty funny to be honest. But all I'm saying is back when this series was releasing, they didn't bring back characters 24/7. The issue closes off on an extremely good ending, closing off the saga perfectly, going back to that park bench with Eddie Brock, and once again a similar situation unfolding where the victim realizes after these stories who Eddie is before being eaten alive. But this time there is a huge twist. The victim absorbs Venom into a device and kidnaps him, and it turns out all this time that character sat with Eddie was the Beetle, just waiting for the right moment to strike. I believe this ending has a significant meaning though. This saga started on a park bench and ends on the same park bench, and everything appears to be very similar, but not everything is what it appears to be, and quite literally, although things seem to be quite the same, the beginning of the saga and the end of the saga are ultimately very different, reflecting that of what's happened in Eddie's life with the changes to the symbiote, but the changes to Peter's life as well, especially now that Gwen Stacy's back alive and she's going to be living with Peter and Aunt May. It's like literally bringing in another family member. So that's of course going to come with its own challenges, and there's going to be a lot of changes, and we're literally just along for the ride. It's going to get pretty crazy. So that was the review for Ultimate Spider-Man issue 128. It was super crazy, especially a fantastic way to end the War of the Symbiote saga. Some of my favourite moments were Aunt May pulling the gun on Eddie Brock when he was trying to break into the house, Gwen Stacy herself mutating into the Carnage symbiote, and then of course that ending with the Beetle abducting Venom. It completely came out of nowhere. You don't really expect someone such as the Beetle to kind of go in civilian clothes and just kind of infiltrate without wearing his suit, so that was especially interesting. As I mentioned it in the review as well, I really liked how Aunt May's character sort of stays true to her in the Ultimate Universe, because obviously Aunt May in the 616 universe is a lot different to Aunt May in the Ultimate Universe, and it definitely goes with her character development in terms of how Uncle Ben died and she remembers some guy breaking in with a gun, similar to how Eddie Brock was just knocking on the door. Now obviously he didn't turn up with a gun, but the situation started to unfold in a similar way. Yeah, I really liked it how the comic kind of stayed consistent with Aunt May's personality, if you get what I mean, and like obviously the experiences in the events that came early in the Ultimate Spider-Man series, like when Uncle Ben died in issue 4, all these issues later, and the continuity is still keeping up. It's just amazing. So Brian Michael Bendis, the writer, did a really good job with that. Now remember, it's going to be super interesting to see what happens going forward, because obviously quite a few things have changed. Gwen Stacy's back to life and now she's living, or going to be living, with Aunt May and Peter. That's like an extra person living in your house. Like there's going to be a few things that come with that. Some of them are going to be really good things and some of them are going to be really bad things. But of course we're going to be getting into the Ultimatum event next, because that's what it's all been leading up to. So it's going to get pretty crazy. Now for the rating of the issue, I think I'm going to go the extra step and give this one a 9 out of 10. It definitely felt like a closure to the end of a saga. Like, so I was left very satisfied, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next issue and getting into the next event that's coming up, which is the Ultimatum. Feels like the closing of a chapter and the starting of a new one, and I hope you guys agree. Now before ending the video, remember, if you want more of these videos and you want to stay updated, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when these videos upload every Monday. Guys, this was Ultimate Spider-Man issue 128, the end of the War of the Symbiote saga, and I'll see you guys next week in the first part to the Ultimatum event. See you later. Before you leave the video, you can click right here to subscribe, you can click over here to see my reviews for the Death of Ultimate Spider-Man, and if you click here you can see the most recent video on the channel. So, it's probably good, so you should probably click it, but you can click this one as well because this one's also good. I'll just wait.